Good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to the last episode of the FSR online series of this academic year. After today, you will have to wait until the beginning of September before meeting us again on this format. My name is Nicola Rossetto. I'm a research fellow at the Florence School of Regulation. And today I'm very happy to debate with you on interoperability and data access. As you might know, access to consumer data is more and more important in digitalized or digitalizing energy markets. It is really important to facilitate the emergence of innovative data-driven services in the energy space. At the FSR, we are part of an Horizon project called EDI that try to build a data space on consumer data. And as part of this research, we recently published a policy brief. Ellen, in a couple of minutes, will introduce you the core elements of this policy brief. After that, we will discuss the topic with 4 experts from different angles. We are very happy to have with us today and with you Konstantinos Stamatis, Policy Officer at the European Commission, DG Energy. Welcome, Konstantinos. Then we have Michel Dion-Desmaël from RTE, the French TSO, and co-chair of the joint working group on data interoperability of ENTSO-E and the EU DSO entity. Welcome, Michel. Then the third guest, Anna Maggioni, officer at ARERA, the Italian energy, not only energy, but for today important is energy, NRA, and member of various expert groups by the Commission, where she represents SEER. And then finally, we have another Anna Gorbacheva. She's a senior strategist and market intelligence manager at 1,5 Degrees, a German-based company that is developing these new innovative energy-related services. Welcome to all of you. Very happy to have you here. We are now going to move to and listen to Ellen. Then we will have a debate. And then, just for you to remember, we will have some minutes to discuss your questions. So feel free to start writing them in the Q&A box. So at the end, we will try to address them. But now, Ellen, I leave to you the screen. You have 10-12 minutes, please, to illustrate to our audience the main ideas of the policy brief. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Nicolo, for the introduction and the welcome. Just a quick disclaimer that just briefly my Zoom disconnected, so I hope it won't happen again. And otherwise, luckily, Nicolo, we wrote the paper together, so I hope you feel comfortable to take over. So we are happy to present this policy brief that we called Energy Consumer Data Management Models, a richer taxonomy and 4 reflections from the European experience. So as the title already said, we looked at what is currently going on in different member states across Europe, and we will focus on energy consumer data management models. So the frameworks that are being implemented typically at national level that allow end users to access their metering and consumption data and also share it with third parties. The policy brief consists of two parts. We propose a richer taxonomy on data management models, and we have four reflections on more the evolution and future of data management models. Today, we will focus on the first part, on the taxonomy. If we have time, we might also briefly introduce the four reflections, but otherwise we invite you to read the policy brief, which was also placed in the chat. So if we talk about a richer taxonomy, maybe it's also interesting then to look at the traditional classification of taxonomy that has been used to classify these data management models, which was more in centralized, hybrid, and decentralized models. So let's go quickly through them. So the idea with the centralized model is that all this metering and consumption data is stored in a central data hub, and also through this data hub, all interactions and processes by all market participants are run. The other extreme you can see on the right side is more the decentralized model, where data stays where it is captured at the source, but then there is typically this market communication framework that is being implemented so that market participants can still interact with each other. And then let's say if you are in between the two, this was typically called like a hybrid model, where you both have services that are more centralized, but also have, for example, data storage, which might be more decentralized. So as you also can see, we have these different flags there, because there are sometimes often like certain archetypes for every model. For example, Estonia is typically called a centralized data model. Spain is typically referred to as a hybrid model, and Austria typically as a centralized model. And how does it come that we have these different models in different member states? That's because also in if you look at the European regulatory framework, where it is in the directive of the clean energy package, where there is established that member states should develop these frameworks for data management models. There you can see, if you go into this article, that it's actually left open at the member states to choose the framework that suits them best. However, they also, in the directive, it's already anticipated that this might lead to a bit more heterogeneity among member states, and that was and to anticipate that, there was also like these requirements on interoperability that mentions that the Commission will come up with these implementing acts to foster interoperability in this context. And that's also why we will focus on today, because the first implementing act that was published in this regard was the one you can see here on the slide, which focused on access of metering and consumption data, and where there is this reference model proposed. Today, we will focus mainly on the role model. So it's typically, it's a set of roles and responsibilities that were highlighted or defined in this context of meter access to metering and consumption data. And also on this role model, member states will have to report about how they filled in this role model by the end of this week. So that's also why we decided to do this debate on this week. And we hope to already get some insights also on how this next phase of this reporting will look like in the coming month. Another thing is that there are also more implementing acts coming. Many are ongoing, and also here we are happy to have experts in our panelists that will share some first insights about the next one on consumer switching and demand response that are currently on the agenda. So let's go deeper into the role model and into the roles that we also focus on into our policy brief, and there are three roles. So first of all, it's typically, let's see if I can make a laser. So it's typically this meter data administrator role. So it's where it's the actor that will take on the storage of the meter data and also will be responsible for distributing this meter data. That's typically one role. Then there's also the permission administrator. So if you as an end user want to give consent to a third party, this consent needs to be registered somewhere, and this is typically done by the permission administrator. And then the final role we will focus on today also is the data access provider. So as a consumer, you can go to this data access provider if you want to have a look at your data, but also third parties who have the permission will be able to go to this actor to access the consumer data. So these are the roles we are focusing on. So we have now this more new model. We have our traditional taxonomy of centralized, hybrid, decentralized. And we had actually a question for all of you also joining the debate today. Do you think this old and this new model, how do they relate to each other? And should we keep referring to data management models as centralized, hybrid, and decentralized? Or might this new role model that we are using might maybe create some changes there? And we have three options for you. So A is yes, because it's intuitive and clear. B is yes, because there is no alternative. And C, it's no, because we should step away from decentralized, hybrid, decentralized, because it does not might not capture all nuances or create confusion. So if all goes well, you will see a poll also arriving at your screen, and we will wait for you to vote and see what you think about this.
I'm very curious to know what our audience think. Maybe Tomiris would, yeah, can close the poll.
Okay, so actually it's a tie. So that's always interesting. I think it's also a good kickoff for the debate we will have afterwards. So half of you think it works very well. Otherwise, half of you think there might create some confusion. So I think already a good start for the discussion we will have afterwards. But before that, we can maybe share a bit our own experience, because when we were doing this research and were interviewing different member states and ask about these data management models, we for us, it was sometimes kind of confusing decentralized, hybrid, decentralized. And that's why we tried to reorder our thoughts a bit and create this new taxonomy that we are also proposing in the policy brief. And more in detail, it looks like this. So one of the things we noticed during these interviews is that often when it was when these experts refer to like centralized or decentralized, they might refer to different roles of the role model. So for some experts, centralized means that the data is centrally stored. From other experts, it might more mean that there is like a common permission administrator and data access provider. So that's why we would propose that there's one dimension to centralization, which more covers these different roles that are proposed in the role model. So in the least amount of centralization, there is no centralization, which is, for example, what we observed in France. Then there can be at least a first degree of centralization when there is this standardized data exchange framework nationally adopted at the country. Then a second level degree of centralization is when these roles of permission administrator and data access provider are also centralized on top of this exchange framework. And then finally, you can all three of these roles being centralized, and then you are on the top of the slide. Another thing that we noticed and we translated into this horizontal dimension is that the entity that takes on this centralized role can also differ. And on the one hand, this can be done by those separately. They can come together in an entity. They can also involve the TSO, or this responsibility can be fully moved to the TSO, or even move away from system operators and be operated by a third party, like in the case of Italy. And when we started to map these different countries that we interviewed as part of the EDI project, we came to the following mapping, and we saw that maybe there might be some nuances that could be added when referring to data management models as decentralized, hybrid, and centralized. So that is the new framework we propose in our policy brief. For the sake of time, I will leave it here, so we have enough time for the discussion. But so we also have 4 reflections on more where we are moving with decentralization, on governments and stakeholder engagements, on data, on creating data volumes, and also on near real-time data. So if you're interested in that, we invite you to read the policy brief. And with that, I thank you and give the floor back to Nicolo.
Thank you, Ellen, for the overview. Well, I will open the panel debate by sending the ball first to Konstantinos. Konstantinos, as Ellen said just a few minutes ago, the Commission has critical in the space assigned by Article 24. Actually, you started doing your job, and a couple of years ago, you published the first implementing act. I was curious to know how the process is developing, what you have learned in this last couple of years. Is the process of fostering interoperability across borders going smoothly or not? And also, I know that you are already starting to look at the second implementing act. There was a recent consultation for data about consumer switching. So I think our audience would be very happy to have a hint at that. Please, the screen is yours, Konstantinos.
Thank you very much, Nicolo. Good afternoon to all. First of all, to everyone, thank you for giving us the opportunity to be part of today's panel and debate. So yeah, of course, as you said, this work has started some years ago, even before 2020. With the support of the experts, with the support of back then with the Smart Grids Task Force, the expert group 1 that did some preparatory work on this implementing acts that would come on the basis of the 2019 Electricity Directive, and as you rightly mentioned, Article 24, where it provides this competence to the Commission to adopt implementing acts for ensuring interoperability and non-discriminatory and transparent procedures for access to data, as it is the full, let's say, also title of Article 24. Of course, Article 24 is based, is based in the framework, on the framework of Article 23. That it is, of course, the main article for data management in the directive, and sets the general principles and rules for data sharing. And there in Article 23, you can also find, of course, what kind of data we are talking about, And there in the first paragraph, it details the metering and consumption data, or data required for customer switching, demand response, and other services. So it's quite open. So the Commission, together with experts, let's say, can proceed with a number of implementing acts, I would say, where, of course, it's necessary for facilitating the retail market and of course, empower a consumer. Now, just to mention that there is no deadline in the directive for this implementing act, so there is not a strict, deadline for the Commission to adopt this implementing act. It's quite open. So the first implementing act, as you said, is already adopted back in 2023. It is an implementing regulation, actually. This was developed in cooperation with the experts, with the joint working group. Michel will tell you more about this later. So the experts supported the Commission in this process, of course, provided their technical expertise and provided their opinion for this first implementing act. So the first implementing act refers to metering, to access to metering and consumption data, interoperability, of course, requirements. The objective is of course, to promote interoperability and data exchange across member states, to support competition in retail markets, and indeed to reduce administrative costs for all market actors. Just to mention that it refers to validated historical data and non-validated near real-time data. So it applies to both type of data, and of course it brings multiple benefits for the consumers to access their data in a timely and simple and secure way through interoperable procedures. I would say, regarding the lessons learned, let's say we have not yet received the formal feedback from the member states, or some of them have already sent their feedback, or they are in the process of sending their reports to the Commission, which, as you said, the deadline is the 5th of July for this first implementing act. So we don't have yet, of course, a clear picture on this. And then this reporting in cooperation with the joint working group will be uploaded in a platform. And this also, Michel can tell you more about this later. Just to say that as a lesson learned, let's say, through this process, because it was a newly developed, let's say, area for us as well, but also for a number of experts that they were involved in this work. So a key innovation that this first implementing regulation is bringing is the so-called reference model that lays down roles, tasks, and procedures for the actors involved in this data exchange, let's say, process. It's more or less a little bit what Ellen before described on the basis of the EDI project, that, of course, contributed very much in our work and the work of the experts. So more or less the similar roles that Ellen described before. So it was a lesson learned there. It was let's say a struggle, if you wish, how we bring together all these different models that exist in the European Union across member states, and how we can fit this under one umbrella, under one model, and how this can work at the end for all. And I think we, up to now at least, and from the feedback we have from the member states, okay, of course, there are always some kind of, let's say, differences and problems. But I think that at the end, the reference model will work quite well and accommodates all the national, let's say, all the national models and all the national differences. Just also to mention about the first implementing act, but also the second on customer switching. When we talk about interoperability, we follow this SGA model, Smart Grids Architecture model. So there are 5 layers of interoperability are defined. So we stay at the top 3 levels of interoperability, which is the business, function, and information layer. We do not go down to the communication or component layers, that are more detailed, and we leave this to member states to define under their national settings. Just quickly regarding the second implementing act that is now, let's say, close also to adoption. This, again, we had the support of the joint working group of the experts. Indeed, they provided their expertise and their opinion for this. So where this implementing act, why it is important, let's say, it will enable a faster and simpler, let's say, switching process. Also, it links with the obligation of the Electricity Directive for technical switch within 24 hours by 2026. So there are multiple benefits that this implementing regulation we expect it will bring to the industry and to member states in terms of interoperability, but also in terms of sharing experience and models and procedures among the different actors. So where we stand with this implementing act, as you said, the public consultation through Have Your Say has finished on the 17th of June. Now we are in the process of discussing with the member states and going through the comitology procedure, and we expect by the end of the year for this second implementing act to be adopted. And there is we are working also on a third implementing act. Michelle can tell you more about this. This implementing act will concern data required for demand response, and it is closely linked to the network code. So somehow will complement, let's say, the network code on demand response.
Thank you, Konstantinos. Thank you. Sorry, there was a little break in my connection, but thank you very much for a very comprehensive point of view from the Commission side. As you said, let's move to Michelle, because of course the implementing regulation assign an important role to system operators. Actually, there is a list of task they have to jointly deliver, and so the DSO entity. And I'm very happy to hear from Michelle how the process is going on, and also if she has something to share with us from this new implementing act related to demand response that will be issued at some point in the future. Please, Michelle.
Yes, good afternoon. Maybe you can go to the last slide because a lot of things were already said. So maybe you just go to the last slide. It's about the organization of the joint working group. So the joint working group is composed from experts from ENSOE, so the European Organization for TSO, and EU DSO entity, which is also European organization but for DSO. So regarding the activity of the task of the joint working group, first, so we have 3 work streams. So the first one, which is called monitoring implementing regulation, it's about regulation that already came into force. So currently, it's the first implementing regulation on access to metering data. And so our task is to, so we have in this work stream, we have developed the guidance in order to help member states to do the mapping. And we will also implement a website in order to publish all the mappings from the member states. So this will ensure transparency on how the reference model that is defined in the implementing regulation is implemented at national level. So this is the first work stream. For all the 3 work streams, we work also with stakeholder panels. So we also provide our some element about our work to some stakeholders, and of course with the aim to receive some feedback. So this was for the first work stream about monitoring of existing implementing regulation. The second work stream is about the development of new regulation. So last year we sent a proposal to European Commission on the regulation, which is called customer switching. And currently, as said by Konstantinos, we are working on demand response implementing regulation. So it is really related to the network code demand response. So the network code demand response is not yet adopted. So but a proposal was sent by ACER to European Commission. So we are working on this version, and the idea is of course to ensure compliance between the network code demand response and the proposal of implementing regulation on demand response. So in this implementing regulation, as in the previous ones, we define rules related to demand response and some procedure associated with procedural steps. And also, of course, the information objects that are exchanged between the different rules. One of the main set of procedure is about the exchange with what is defined in the network code demand response as the flexibility information system. It's basically all the master data for demand response. But there are also some operational procedures, for example, related to the bidding and to the activation of the bids for demand response. So it's basically our main task in this work stream related to the development of new implementing regulation. And the objective is to submit our proposal to European Commission before the end of this year. We had for this, we have, as I said, we have some exchanges with our stakeholder panel. We had also some internal consultation, for example. And now the objective is to complete the proposal on demand response and to send it to the European Commission before in December. Yes, the last work stream, which is also very important, I think, in this joint working group, is about data interoperability models. So basically, with this work stream, we also we work on standardization of the data exchanges. There are several activities, but for example, this work stream is in charge of what is called the harmonized electricity role model. So the objective is to have a common language regarding the rules for electricity. And one important task of this work stream is also to provide, for example, implementing guides related to the implementing regulation. So we propose a way to implement implementing regulation, and we make also the link with the standards and the standardization bodies. For example, for the implementing regulation on access to metering data, we have just published an implementing an implementing guide related to this regulation, and we propose a way to implement the data exchange for access related to access to metering data. So it's also an important part, an important activity of the joint working group. It was my presentation of the joint working group. I don't know if you have a question,
very
Nicolo,
interesting. Oh, it's very interesting because you see, we come from a world where different system operators played different roles, and now the European approach is to put them together and jointly foster interoperability. We are a bit behind schedule, so maybe we can jump to the next panelist and maybe come back to you, Michelle, later in the Q&A. Let's now deep dive, let's say, more at the national level. The European Directive says that member states must facilitate the full interoperability of energy services within the Union, respecting national practices. And they give important roles to national authorities. So now I would go to our first Anna Maggioni from Italian NRA, and I would like to ask her to share with our audience today what are the main insights from the Italian experience, how this process to fostering access to consumer data has been unfolding, and if she saw in her experience in the past years any barrier to the implementation of the European approach to interoperability. And I would say if she has any view on the fitness of this approach. I mean, is it what we need, or do we need more or less, or something different? I know there are a lot of questions. Feel free to start from the one you prefer, Anna. Please, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Nicolo. I'm so pleased to be here and actually share two different perspectives because, as Nicolo mentioned at the beginning, I was the member of, on behalf of SEER, of the Expert Group 1 under the Smart Grid Task Force that was actually entrusted with the task of submitting a first draft of the implementing regulation on data interoperability to the Commission to then be adopted. But the drafting process was entrusted to the Expert Group, which I was a member of. And as Konstantinos mentioned, it was a very long process because EG1 began already by best practice sharing and mapping the different practices among member states for data collection, storage, and management. So we did find a very heterogeneous mapping. There were not two member states that had the same kind of data management model, as was shown by Ellen in her slides. So my first perspective is as a member of the EG1. And my second perspective, obviously, is as part of the Italian regulator. I was actually in part of the team that implemented, let's say, the framework for access to consumption data and data sharing in Italy. So as my first perspective, my first hat, I have a few thoughts that I'd like to share. And the first thought is I'm a great fan of this implementing regulation, and in particular of the reference model. Not only because I was part of the drafting of the model itself, but I think it really does achieve the goal of being robust enough to actually be a reference model for member states, but also flexible and adaptable enough to actually be compliant with the national practices that are already in action. So it doesn't, let's say, from my perspective, oblige member states to change or to tweak their national practices. National practices can fit very easily into the reference models. I think the main strength is that it's based on a role model. So this role model allows all member states to just make sure that there's at least one actor that is responsible for carrying out a series of roles and responsibilities and duties. So I like to use the metaphor, it doesn't say where or who should sell milk. It just says that in your country, you need somebody who sells milk. So that could be a grocery store, it could be the hardware store, but there needs to be somebody who carries out this task. So in the Italian case, it was just quite easy to look and see, okay, my procedures are very different. Most of the roles are actually carried out by one actor because we have a very strongly centralized data management model. But there are a series of passages and procedures that don't even occur in the Italian system because it's all one actor carrying out these procedures and responsibilities. However, it is fitting perfectly within the reference model. So I think that is a very big strength of the reference model. And I think, like I said before, the strength is actually based on the fact that we're using the role model. And this is what makes it perfectly adaptable to the different environments. If I can, let's say, spark a slight debate, what I have reflected upon in my experience is that there seems to be kind of an absence in the role of national regulators within the framework of institutions that's laid down by this implementing regulation. So I know it is within each member state's jurisdiction and naturally within the member state's powers to attribute stronger powers to the national regulatory authority. And this is the case in Italy. We have a very clear, precise legal framework whereby the regulator was actually given ample powers to create this framework. But in the implementing regulation, there seems to be a slight absence of NRAs. And I was just, this was an issue that was actually raised even during the drafting process. And I know it's hard to find common ground between 28 member states and also all the other experts and actors that were involved in the drafting. But perhaps food for thought, there would be more margin for regulatory oversight. We're talking about a new market, and I think that's within the powers and the responsibilities of NRAs to oversee, supervise, and make sure that these markets are working. To conclude, I could bring to the table my perspective as the Italian regulator. I have to say that for us, it was a great advantage to have the centralized data management model. We have one actor who's an independent actor who carries out this task, which is acquirente unico, concerning data management. So our first step already in 2017 was to create Portale Consumi, which is a portal through which all Italian customers can access their consumption data. The second step was to build within this Portale Consumi a second portal, which is where consumers can authorize third parties to access their data. I have to say one of the many hurdles that we encountered in this process was, like I said, even though we have a very clear and codified national legal framework for this aspect, we had to go through quite a few loopholes in finding the balance of where our powers lie and what exactly is the member state, where the NRA steps in. And so this was a challenge. This might be a national particularity, but in Italy, it was quite difficult to follow through with all the prerequisites that our national authority for data privacy and protection put down. So there were a lot of hurdles that we had to overcome in making sure that we were completely compliant with the GDPR. And this is the gold standard for data protection, so it's not a criticism. It's just to say that it was an extra step that we had to overcome, and that is not part of our normal day-to-day duties as energy regulators. So it was very challenging to make sure that we had all the elements that were, let's say, compliant in the eyes also of another regulator. And this was a very important aspect to the whole mechanism and framework that we designed and implemented for third-party access to data. And from this perspective, I think the biggest food for thought that I'd like to bring to the discussion is this enough to kickstart the market for data sharing? Because in my experience, we have created the Portale Consumi, and it is a fantastic instrument. Like, people look at it and they say, it's wonderful, but we have very few consumers that are actually logging in and looking at their data. So I don't know if that's lack of incentives, lack of information, lack of communication, but for the purpose of energy efficiency, I don't see such widespread interest in looking at energy data consumption. And like I said, it's really user-friendly, it's quite easy to access. However, many people don't use it to its potential, maybe don't even use it at all. So I'm wondering if the next step of allowing third parties to have access to data is actually going to be beneficial. I mean, are there the right signals to consumers to share their data? Is it going to be easier having to, let's say, being able to give all this information to a third party who will in change maybe provide a turnkey solution? So you don't have to look at your data. You can just authorize somebody else and they can give you solutions. But still there, I'm wondering, are there enough economic signals that is going to kickstart this market? So that's my main food for thought. In my experience, it could be a limit. I don't know if we need to do more. So like I said, I think the reference model is great. It really allows member states to make sure that they're compliant without forcing or, any kind of standardization. We're looking at harmonization. I think we got the right level of harmonization. I just don't know if the market will respond, because in Italy, where we know that the Portale Consumi, third parties who are interested in having data in our minds will be suppliers who would like to offer more tailor-made energy contracts, and also energy service providers. But with energy suppliers, we don't know if the market is actually ready to create these tailor-made solutions with the inelastic demand for energy. And as for energy service providers, we don't know where the market is and if consumers will respond in a quick way.
We have one of them here in the panel, so maybe, Anna, I can turn directly your question to the other Anna in the virtual room and hear from them. The second Anna, you work for one of these companies that try to deliver more, let's say, more evolved, more evoluted services to consumers. Is it this important for you will it help develop your business and maybe develop it across borders? Yes, no? What do you expect from also the repository on national practices that at some point will be available? Please, the skin is yours, Anna.
Thank you, Niccolò. I wanted to start just giving briefly background of what we're doing. So if it's okay, I'll bring up 2 slides. Let's see if it works. If it doesn't, well, it should be ask me for system settings. It's fine. I'll just give a broad overview of what we do at 1,5, and then I'll answer your question directly after that. So for everyone, so that you have a bit more context, I work at a startup or scale-up called 1,5. We're about only 3 years old, and what we do is enabling sort of all buildings to be climate neutral across Europe. So what we do is we install PV panels, batteries, EV chargers, heat pumps, air conditioning units, and we ensure that they're all interoperable through this centralized platform we have called Heartbeat. So it's effectively a home energy management system that is able to communicate to all of these assets. And we also licensed a utility provider. So we not only install and integrate these assets, but we also provide contracts for dynamic tariffs. And so we combine all of this in our centralized platform and are able to optimize the assets of our customers and steer them in an automated way. So that can reduce bills, we increase self-consumption, and also sort of align demand and supply because we are reacting to price signals from the markets. We are right now active in 6 European countries plus Australia, managing 500 megawatts of flexible assets. So in total, we have 50,000 steerable assets across Germany, Denmark, Sweden, and the Netherlands. So I'm just highlighting this to show that we have quite a lot of countries we're operational in, offering similar but slightly different products everywhere because markets across Europe are just different. Residential assets in one country can't perform the same grid services as they can do in other countries. So sort of this is what we are working with. And our services, to answer your question, Niccolò, depend on a functioning infrastructure and data transmission. So if the infrastructure isn't there for us to operate in, we cannot scale. So what we're already doing today is we have these 24-hour forecasts for the consumption. We also know the price data, for example, in the day-ahead markets, which are also forecasted or shared 24 hours in advance. And then we operate these assets to respond to these price signals. But we see a few challenges, and they are different across markets. So one of our biggest markets is, of course, Germany, where the company is also from. And in Germany right now, the smart meter rollout is only at 2%. So I think we have some of the slowest rates within the EU, and this really slows down the rate at which we can implement, but also other competitors or similar providers of these new energy services. And why is this limiting our opportunity to scale and introduce these services to other customers on the market is because we need smart meter data and access to data for the billing. Sort of the limited availability of the installation of these assets, or smart meters in general, and also the limited availability of real-time data really affects the systems we can offer. And just to stick to the example in Germany, the reason why it's only 2% smart meter rollout and why this rollout is so small, there are a few reasons, but some of them are over-engineered systems, very high data privacy and security demands, complex processes, and of course also very high implementation costs. So there's this thing called Smart Meter Gateway in Germany, which kind of is technically quite sophisticated, but very hard to operate and integrate. So I think in Germany, we put a strong focus on sort of privacy, security, but we sort of underestimated the usability and flexibility of building then business models on top. So in Germany, the data structure, you've showed it before, centralized, decentralized, hybrid. It's quite a decentralized structure where we have something called smart meter point operators. And they're completely separate from grid operators and suppliers. So they then manage the data that we need to connect with. And because of this, the consumer engagement, Anna has mentioned it before, is quite weak, but that's not because customers are not interested. It's really because it's super difficult to get to the data and its complex processes, specifically in Germany. So there are interfaces to get access to the data, but they're not really user-friendly. The benefits of these new assets are not really, of smart meters, are not really well communicated, and it just slows the uptake rate. But what 1,5 does is, because we're reliant on having integration to all these distributed energy assets and optimizing them against the energy market, we have our own app, our own HAMS that collects the data, which we currently don't get from more standardized platforms. And what we see, of course, our customers are highly prosumerized, if you could call it this way. So they have EVs, batteries, right? They're aware of prices on the day-ahead markets. We have very high engagement rates on our app. So we plot the data. We show them how high is your generation, what's your consumption, how much load can we shift. And our engagement rates on our apps are similar to the ones of WhatsApp. Our customers go into it every day. They look at the data. They're interested in how much they've saved, not only cost, but also CO2 emissions avoided. So what are we doing right now to sort of find a way to still scale while the market is not offering the data landscape we need? We have partnered with a smart meter installer in Germany. So we install smart meters ourselves. So we can then support the 15-minute billing or the 15-minute data transmission, and then the billing of day-ahead market prices and dynamic tariffs. And this is kind of our way around. But an example where it works really well is you've also had it in your study, is the Netherlands, where we have 100% smart meter rollouts. So switching a supplier or connecting a new customer is a matter of a month, whereas in Germany it can take up to 9 months. And even innovative companies like 1,5 don't have an opportunity to speed this up. So to conclude, or our asks in this case is, we don't necessarily require the same data structure and data management structure in all markets. We're fine if they're centralized, interoperable, if they're centralized, decentralized, or hybrid. But what is important is that they're interoperable, there's standardized data access, and there's process transparency, so you know how to get to the data. So all our systems work in an automated way. So it's important to be able to connect through API, make it machine readable. So this really allows for these new energy business model to be built on top. What we do prefer is kind of having this mandatory maybe hub structure, similar to the Scandinavian models, that all the market communication runs over one central hub, which makes it easier to kind of gather the data, particularly so it's more of the process of getting the data should be standardized and clear in the communication. And then, of course, there's always the behind the meter and in front of the meter interoperability and data access. So we're right now speaking particularly about smart meter data and data access there, but also to even just build innovative system on that data, we also need a lot of interoperability behind the meter, so standardized for all OEMs that operate in these areas. And particularly we see this from in Germany, the distribution network operators. We have 866. I think we're quite an exception within Europe with that amount of distribution network operator. But we are working, or in Germany has some form of standardized communication, but it's definitely not sufficient. Imagine you are a company like 1,5, we have multiple thousands of customers in Germany, and we have 866 transmission system operators. So building a communication with all of them that works and is automated and allows for a smooth process is quite tricky, although we're doing our best. So yeah, we can only build kind of real-time energy system and services if we have the data available. So we kind of need an infrastructure that supports us delivering the kind of best service to the customer and also supporting the energy transition.
Thank you, Anna. I think that you replied to the provocative question of the other Anna. I also saw in the chat that one participant from Ireland confirmed that they see this interest in companies in the energy space. Unfortunately, our time has finished, so I'm really sorry for the couple of questions that were not answered, Antoine and Antoine. We will try to come back to them via email. Well, I can only say this. Thank you very much to all of you. I think it was very instructive, and also for our audience, clarified this maybe not so mainstream topic, but we think it's very much important for the future evolution of energy markets and energy systems in Europe. As we said, this is the last FSR debate of this academic year. So let me conclude by thanking also Tomise behind the screen. She has been supporting us over the past few months. This will be her last FSR online debate. Thank you very much, Tomise, for your support. And having said that, I wish you, all of you, an happy summer to survive the high temperatures, and hope to see you back after the summer break in one of our online events. Have a good afternoon. Goodbye.
Bye.